listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Welcome to Grave Discussions. I'm your host, Barnabas.
And I am your co-host, Samael. Welcome to episode 73, The Book Reads You.
That's right, and it's a line uttered by the protagonist of a new film that just came out today, recording this on Friday, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
And we'll let you know what we thought about it later on in the show.
That's right. As always, we do have to start off by giving a quick shout out to Sports Radio Detroit, our gracious host network.
And you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you just search up SRD Sports Radio Detroit, that's SRD Sports Radio Detroit, not Detroit Sports Radio.
Exactly. Get it right, guys, and go check them and all of the other awesome podcasts out. And we are just going to take a very brief sponsored break before moving on with the rest of the show, so stick around. Here at Grave Discussions, we know that addiction can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. Let the Detox Helpline help you break your addiction to drugs and alcohol. Call the addiction specialist now at the Detox and Treatment Helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They're always available for you, and if you have private insurance, they specialize in finding you the right treatment. Give them a call at 1-800-213-9257. That is 800-213-9257.
All right, Sam. So since our last episode, there has been a lot going on. And one thing we didn't quite expand on was that today is going to be kind of a special episode focusing really on horror anthologies. You know, Scary Stories, the original series of books, was a collection of short stories. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. Some anthology news on this episode, but the first is actually pretty interesting. Adam Wingard, director of Your Next, is going to be directing an Event Horizon series for Amazon.
I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, I've heard that the movie is like, you know, one of the GOATs in horror circles. Mm-hmm. I still haven't seen it, but I heard it was like one of the best. And I don't know how I feel about them doing this. I don't know. It seems like, you know how before paranormal movies were the trend,
mm-hmm.
and then it was like torture porn. Now it's like remakes and reboots.
Yeah, it really is. And this is not one that I kind of expected, but it's set in space. It's kind of like I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of body horror, kind of psychological. It's really sort of disturbing stuff that happens just on this spaceship to this crew. And I guess I could see how they would maybe do a series out of it if it's a more expansive type of thing, because there's no way they can fit something similar to the actual film, you know, in a whole series. I mean, that would just be way too dragged out. So I'm sort of excited about it. I do really like the movie, but I'd really have to see kind of what the plot is and how it actually relates to the original film, you know?
I'm probably going to watch it soon just so when the show comes out I can understand what the fuck is going on.
You should. It's just a great like horror, you know, sci-fi horror movie too, so I always kind of recommend it when people ask. But Adam Wingard directing is cool too. I did like Your Next. Not everybody did, but I enjoyed it. I think that he's pretty talented. Him tackling a sci-fi horror is going to be interesting since Your Next was really kind of more rooted in reality, you know?
Yeah.
But I think he did a good job. He succeeded. So there's that. But moving on, the first of our anthology-related news, and returning star known for his portrayal of Candyman, Tony Todd, is going to be starring in an upcoming horror anthology called Realm of Shadows.
And he's going to be this like man of God who like tries to help his friend with like split personality disorder or something,
mm-hmm.
and stop him from like being overcome by Satan and all that religious stuff.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's like that story that's described, and then there's something else too. Some guy or girl, I don't know, it doesn't really explain it, but called Master Macon, and it's the owner of a haunted vault near a cemetery, and also the narrator. So it's kind of cool. There's like a narrator. I'm just curious to see how like the anthology format's going to fit into this, because it gives like a real plot line to a movie, with Tony Todd's character and everything. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to tie it together. Southbound did really good at tying all the stories together. And Trick or Treat, those are like two of my like favorite now anthologies.
Yeah, I still have to see Southbound, but Trick or Treat was great. We'll see about this one. There's no date yet as far as like a release, but there is a poster. I will say, not a big fan of the poster, honestly.
No,
makes it seem like kind of low budget, but yeah, we'll hear more about that one. We'll let you guys know. The last bit of official news here is Netflix announcing an upcoming horror anthology called Ghost Stories.
Yeah, it's made by an Indian dude that did something else called Lust Stories, and apparently this is supposed to like tie in with that somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. My whole thing was that there already is an anthology called Ghost Stories, which we actually covered. So
the one with when the dude runs over the devil accidentally.
Yeah, with
he's been dead the whole time, so it's like the same kind of ball busting experience as like The Abandoned or whatever, or like Dead End, like they were dead the whole time, or they were in a coma. Like, dude, we've seen that movie.
Yeah,
and fucking the first one was Jacob's Ladder. That was like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I liked that movie. This one, I don't know why it's called the exact same thing. I feel like that's kind of weird. But I don't know. Like I don't know if this is gonna be like a Bollywood thing, but if it's anything like the other Indian movies that we have on Netflix, I'm not that interested. Not just because they're like Indian movies, but they just seem they're like very cheesy,
and they're not like really passionate about the movies. It seems like they're just trying to like fit in with the horror fad, like, and the acting's like really bad in them. I've tried to watch a few of them. I've actually watched a few of them. I forgot the name of one, but it had an insane name.
I'm sure some of them look okay, but that's when they really try to be serious about it. Like those, I can give them a chance, but
but the plots are usually weak and like the acting is bad. So
yeah, even then they're still like kind of over the top sometimes too. I think,
they are, and they have like, I don't know if you noticed this from watching Indian horror, like they use heavy CGI.
Oh yeah, it's kind of obnoxious how much, but I feel you. Still be on the lookout for that one if you guys are interested in it. It's another horror anthology. We don't really know much more info yet, but if you're into anthologies, might be worth checking out. Now, we've got a few trailers lined up. We'll go over those pretty quickly here, and then we'll move on with the rest of the show. But the first trailer actually looks pretty cool. It's for a movie called The Furies.
At first, I thought it was The Furries, and I thought it was about to be some people dressed up like cats walking around stabbing people and then dressing them up as like alligators and then fucking them, but it's not.
If the new Cats was a horror movie.
Exactly. So it's going to be about like 8 women are kidnapped, and they're like sent to the jungle, and they got like cameras in their eyes or something, and they got 8 men who are the killers trying to kill them all.
Yeah, and yeah, pretty much. But you know what? It still looks kind of cool, kind of unique. There are 8 different costumed killers, which all seem pretty unique to me, but at the same time, they've all got that like backwoods hillbilly kind of overall aesthetic. So I don't know how I feel about that exactly, but they seem all right.
I felt like from the trailer, at least, it looked a bit shaky too.
Yeah,
it looked like a grindhouse type of cinematography. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like it's gonna have a lot of moving kind of action shots, which I'm fine with in movies like this. I mean, slasher movies have a good mix of those and suspenseful scenes, where they actually like initiate the tension and build it, and where everything's dark and they're stalking them or whatever. This one may feel a little bit too chaotic to do that. So if it's gonna go like all out, it really has to go like all out,
From the reviews, it said it's like a gore fest. So
yeah. So I think if it does that, it has a chance of success, because if you have like this plot and you don't commit to it, then it's just gonna be stupid. Like it's gonna be too dysfunctional and it's just not gonna flow well. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So be on the lookout for that one, guys. I am still excited for it. It looks like it might be successful in that aspect. It's coming out November 7th in Australia. So when we have a US date, we'll let you know, of course.
Dude, I'm more excited for the second movie. Yo, Gary Oldman's making a comeback.
I've actually had people that I have on my friends list like sharing stuff about this movie. And I think some Michigan talent worked on this film, possibly. So it's possible. But yeah, this one is called Mary. It's releasing October 11th in theaters and on digital and VOD. And yeah, it's got Gary Oldman in kind of a classic haunted house story, but
it's a boat.
It's on a boat
in the middle of the sea.
Yeah. So, we've had boat horror movies before, but it's always something kind of unique. It's kind of a smaller boat too, so it seems like it's going to be kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah, and they're being haunted by Scary Mary or some shit like that. I don't fucking remember.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's going to be a whole fucking story, kind of like we had in our main focus today, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on, of course. But yeah, Mary kind of promises this classic ghost story, but in a unique setting. So I'm always kind of interested in those. Usually it's the big gothic house, and those can get kind of stale sometimes if there's nothing interesting particularly about them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you think it's going to be successful?
I don't think it's going to be received well. I mean, sure, Gary Oldman's in it, but people nowadays are going to be like, oh, who's that? Like, besides like the old heads,
Yeah. But I mean, it's Academy Award winner Gary Oldman. I'm actually kind of surprised to see him in a movie like this.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he's fucking Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. The production value does not seem like terrible here, but it also doesn't seem like the level at which Gary Oldman actually is.
Yeah.
To me at least. But hey, I'm glad he's in it. He's probably going to be the best part of this movie.
Most likely.
But I am kind of excited to see it.
I just hope the movie doesn't suck. I mean, the four actors, accept the role. They read through the script, and he liked it, so I'm going to trust him.
Oh, yeah, I trust his artistic judgment as well.
That and The Lighthouse, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one, too. Are you excited about this next one, though?
I honestly am.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about this next one?
So, according to ancient whatever the fuck, the Jack-in-the-Box was an evil spirit that was trapped in, guess what? A box.
No, Jack-in-the-Box specifically.
Yeah, and now the Jack comes out of the box, and he's a clown. He's an evil clown. It's like It meets Terrifier. That's what it looked like. It seems like one of those early 2000s movies. You know what I mean? It has that type of like premise.
It's definitely a little bit lower budget too, so I think that contributes to it. But it does one fatal thing, and it gives away its best element, like in broad day in the trailer. It's kind of cool seeing the Jack-in-the-Box creature like we do, but at the same time, it kind of ruins the suspense and the surprise, to me at least. Like, imagine if you saw the entire clown creature from Clown just like right there in the trailer, and it's like all over the trailer.
Yeah,
you'd kind of like lose interest in it a little bit. So other than that, though, it looks okay. Like, that definitely seems like the best part of this movie. The acting seems whatever. The cinematography seems really whatever, but I still kind of want to see it just to sort of see where they go with the creature.
I think it's gonna be, like I said, early 2000s type horror.
Yeah, that's probably a fair notion. Yeah, so we'll see about that one, guys. Unfortunately, it does not have a release date listed yet, but of course we will let you guys know once it does. Now we're going to move on from the news. Hit us up about anything we've discussed so far, and we'd love to talk about it with you guys. But we are going to move on to one of our favorite segments where we discuss a classic horror film, and this one's going to be related. It is an anthology, and we're going to be talking about it in the Cult Corner. And on this week's Cult Corner, Fiends, we've got a pretty classic horror anthology, I must say.
One of the oldest, besides like Dead of Night.
Yeah, that was the black and white one, And I don't really know if there were any before that. We'd have to do our research there, unfortunately. But Trilogy of Terror came out in 1975. And yeah, I mean, this really kind of set the bar. I think that it's definitely a cult classic because of its influence. But it did one unique thing as well, because Trilogy of Terror stars none other than Karen Black,
Yeah.
and Karen Black
Yep.
in 3 separate stories, which is cool. Actually, for some reason, didn't know that until I just watched it for the first time recently. But I think it's pretty cool. I mean, do you think that sort of lended to its status?
I think she was like a giant part of it. You know, she's an OG. I mean, she was in Burnt Offering. She was in this. And she was in a wide array of movies, and even in House of a Thousand Corpses for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
she let herself go. I'll tell you that much. All that plastic surgery made her look like a fish that lost a fight.
I mean, I suppose that was probably the purpose for that film. But yeah, it's kind of shocking to see the transition. But, you know, here in 1975, I mean, she was a starlet. Absolutely. That's, you know, without a doubt. She's still a pretty popular actress, but it's certainly a disconnect for sure. But I thought she did a great job. The characters she portrayed to me all felt sort of similar. I don't know if it's just
I
because...
think the first two, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just because of like the 70s clothing style or the way she wore her hair or something. But even just in like how the characters spoke, I could definitely feel some similarities. You know, it was often that sort of mid to high class sort of, you know, 70s woman who's dealing with some interesting things. In the first 2 stories, it's actually kind of closer to reality. The third story really kind of amplifies the whole like supernatural factor of this movie, but it's not actually quite as, I don't know, like dark or twisted or whatever as I thought it was going to be. But what was your favorite part about this movie? And do you think that, you know, having her play all these characters in different stories actually worked?
I think it worked, and I think the Zuni doll was probably my favorite segment because like the first 2 weren't really horror. You know what I mean? I would classify that as more of like a thriller.
Yeah.
Or like drama.
The first one, I don't know. I was okay with the first one. It was an interesting twist, but I almost wish that the twist was, I don't know, just better.
Supernatural, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of like sometimes a cheap way to make something more interesting, but you know what? It fucking is. I mean, this is true.
Yeah.
You know, at least for a lot of people like me, it makes stuff more interesting. Absolutely. You know, because it's not something that we just see every day in real life where we just walk around and sit down with our friends or, you know, do whatever, you know. So this one sort of did it, except, I don't know, initially I thought that it was something supernatural because maybe she was like immortal or something or doing this
I thought she was
forever.
like a witch.
Yeah, but at the same time, it didn't really give us a good indication of that. It kind of just seemed like she had been doing this for a while, but as a human being and just moving around from town to town or something. Just that she was like a serial killer or she was crazy or something, you know?
Yeah, I just think it wasn't like climactic enough. Sure, the twist was nice, but like at the end when it was just a reveal and that was the end of this segment.
Yeah,
same thing with the second one.
It didn't feel punchy. It just felt kind of abrupt.
Yeah.
I guess, you know? The second one too.
I mean, this movie, like, if you look at all the memorabilia and the collectibles and like the fan art for this movie, it's all centered around that Zuni doll.
Yeah.
I think it shouldn't have been an anthology, no offense. I think it should have just been a whole movie centered around that Zuni doll, and other shit should have started happening. Like her first night she has the Zuni doll, she's going to sleep, she's waking up with cuts on her arm, stuff's being moved around, you know, stuff like that, like subtle stuff. And
actually introduce like the mom and stuff into it maybe too,
yeah.
You know?
And then at the end of the movie, instead of the segment, her just waiting behind the door.
Which was cool.
Which was, yeah, I mean, that was the part I was like really kind of waiting for. If you look close, when she's like moving her lips, you can actually see like the top of the fangs though, like, and that they're fake.
Yeah, but you know, it's fine. It's still kind of like
creepy as shit though.
Yeah, it's shocking. Absolutely. So it was cool. And, if you didn't know about it, you certainly weren't expecting it.
Oh, no.
But actually, fun fact, she apparently was the one to suggest doing that.
The whole ending part?
Yeah, it's so that's pretty cool. And she actually rewrote a lot of like her dialogue too. Yeah. No, she's great. I mean, she's super talented. She's amazing in what she does. And, for like a low budget kind of horror anthology, I thought she really had good input for it and made the movie a lot better for it, so that segment was definitely cool. And I actually want to go a little bit ahead and quote Guillermo del Toro here, because as we know, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark doesn't exactly follow that standard anthology kind of structure.
No, it's more like the quote unquote art coming to life.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that, of course, pretty soon here, but he kind of said that they didn't really want to do it in a standard anthology format because typically people remember an anthology mostly by its weakest entry, and I would say that's not quite true with Trilogy of Terror here, because like we've been saying, the Zuni doll segment was definitely the one thing about this movie that most people like and remember.
That shit was wild. It reminded me of Donnie from the Wild Thornberries. Yeah. Remember him?
Yeah, sort of faintly, but yes. The noises were great.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I can't even reproduce it, but those were awesome. Just like the action was very cool. And the fact that, she was kind of home alone and couldn't really escape because this little thing was coming after her with a spear. I mean, that was really cool, And it was actually kind of suspenseful too.
It was, but like the whole ridiculousness of it is what made it, gave it this cult status,
Yeah, especially because the first two movies, while they have some semblance of humor in them, aren't really actually that funny or anything.
No.
Or even reach that goofy level, but the Zuni doll one did reach the goofy level. And
this was the first movie with like 80s style fucking just shit going on, you know what I mean? Just the wackiness.
Yeah, I can see that, because we had stuff like Puppet Master and everything too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely influential. I mean, most people remember it for that segment. It is my favorite segment. The first two were okay, but I just feel like they weren't quite imaginative enough.
And like you said, they ended abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, they're not horror, okay?
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the second segment, Millicent and Therese, I called it pretty early on that, okay, they were probably the same person.
Yeah.
And then it didn't really do too much more with that,
Yeah.
It was a little bit predictable, and then the ending was just meh, in my opinion.
Would have been cool if it was like that Tales from the Crypt thing. Like, they're not twins, but like on the front side it's one, and on the back side it's the other.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping that it was separate
I was too.
and that they just thought of something cool.
But this is probably the first movie that did that.
Yeah, we'd have to look, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
It'll be hard to find.
So I mean, if it is, then for that reason alone, it's it's something at least. But it wasn't that great of a segment to me. I actually kind of liked the first one a little bit more, even though it was very misogynistic. But I mean, that was the point of it. So the last one really just felt like an actual horror thing, and honestly, in that short story format, I thought it was pretty perfect. We got a good twist ending, sort of, and it was just enjoyable.
I agree completely, and, it's rightfully a cult movie.
Yeah, so that movie has that typical anthology structure where it's like stories, and this next one, also based on stories, but takes a little bit of a different route. We're going to be talking about it in our main segment. But first, we just have a few sponsored messages, so stick around.
Because I feel like a salad tossing might feel good.
What? Out of Bounds Detroit Podcast. Tuesday morning and Friday mornings here on SportsRadioDetroit.com.
Hey, Samael.
Hey, Barnabas, what's up?
Oh, not much. Have you ever written a book?
No, but I've written a musical.
Oh. Well, you can become a published author with Dorrance Publishing, the nation's oldest publishing services company.
Aha, I hear countless authors have trusted Dorrance for nearly 100 years to bring their books to the market.
Their professional team will edit your text, design your book pages, and create an appealing, eye-catching custom cover. Plus, their authors benefit from a custom book promotion marketing campaign that makes your book available where people buy books.
So make this free call right now to claim your free author's guide to publishing. Do not wait another day. Take one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a published author.
And seeing your name in print.
Aha! You've already written a book. Next thing to do is make this free call now to Dorrance Publishing and get your free guide to publishing. Call right now.
The number is 1-800-213-9259. Again, 1-800-213-9259. All right, Sam. So we have been alluding to it all episode long so far. Scary stories to tell in the dark. A nostalgic trip back to the books that fucking freaked the shit out of us when we were younger. At least most of us, growing up in like the 90s when they were really popular. I certainly read them. I don't think I read all of them, but
I read one, and it's when they used to have those book fairs at school.
Yeah.
Where you just walk into the library and you could have a free book.
those were the best.
But like I normally grabbed R.L. Stine over the scary stories. I had one scary stories book.
Mhm.
I don't remember which one it was because I don't even remember reading it. But most of the time I was grabbing Goosebumps and R.L. Stine, and I was like, "Can I have the pop-up book?" They're like, "No, this belongs to the library." I was like, "Yo, fuck you," and that was like that was that.
Yeah, I preferred Goosebumps too. I think because Goosebumps actually was targeted more toward kids even younger than the ones who would read scary stories to tell in the dark.
Oh yeah.
First of all, those images were extremely shocking to our impressionable young minds.
Oh yeah.
And definitely created a new generation of horror fans, or helped at least, in my opinion, because people that are our age right now probably have read those books and Goosebumps. And Goosebumps will kind of play into this discussion briefly here, but like it, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the film kind of foregoes the standard anthology structure and instead has one kind of overarching story in which all of the other stories kind of exist.
Yeah.
So very interesting. This one, of course, produced by Guillermo del Toro. So you have to expect that sort of fantasy almost, that, imagination aspect.
Yeah,
of them,
that adventurous fantasy like type story.
Yeah. And this one definitely had those elements, but, first impressions, what do you think about its approach, and do you think it pulled it off?
I think they were definitely targeting a younger audience.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't targeting the people that used to read the books when they were kids, because like we're like 40 now, basically. But
I feel it.
as a kids movie, it was good.
Okay.
Aesthetically, it would be scary to younger kids. Cinematography was like pretty good too. I wasn't surprised, but I felt like the dialogue was like too like simple. I don't know. It was like, they're kids, you don't want them to talk like fucking Lord of the Rings characters. Like
Right.
they said a lot of cliche stuff, and like, it kind of ended, spoiler alert, unresolved for the most part.
Yeah.
And I felt like its weak points were like the dialogue, honestly. Like
the script, really.
Yeah, the script was just lazy, I felt.
I kind of don't blame them because, they were targeting, tweens, I guess. Is that the official term? I don't fucking know.
I don't know,
but
PG-13, that's a teenager.
Yeah.
Tweens are like 12, 11.
17 or under at least. I would say in the 12 to 17 kind of age range was their target audience, but still, I don't know if that gives you an excuse to write dialogue like that, because in my opinion at least, despite the good acting, despite the great production design and the monsters and all of that, the dialogue still kind of took me out of it, just because I couldn't imagine actual people saying that stuff.
No.
Like I could tell that they were acting even though they were trying not to because of it. So that would be really kind of the main thing for me. Honestly, I do think if they approached it in more of a trick or treat style way,
It would have been cool.
it probably would have been a little bit better, just because even
But-
for a teen movie, like,
I'd want a linear story, though.
yeah.
Trick or Treat was all over the place,
Yeah, I think if you put everything in the proper order, then yeah, it would kind of have a a linear story more or less, but even then, like it follows multiple groups of people. So yeah, I guess not. I think the idea that they had for the linear story here was decent. It just felt like it lacked a little bit. I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
it was just a script.
Yeah, I think they were just kind of disrespecting their audience with that script, you know?
I mean, it is for kids, so they're not, like I said, they're not going to talk like fucking Gandalf.
But there are still things that are targeted for kids, in my opinion, that hit the mark a little bit better. Even something like The Goonies, you know? For that time, I mean, sure, it was set around that time. This one was actually set in like 1968. But, you know, it's not hard to like watch movies of that era and kind of figure out how people might talk. Some of the characters were okay. The kid Chuck, actually, I thought he was great. His dialogue mostly was pretty good.
Chuck was good. Stella was good.
Mm-hmm.
August was the nerd, and he did perfectly. But these kids seemed way too modern.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I didn't even realize it was set in 1968.
Yeah, I think it's really just because of their appearance. Like, it's hard to hide it. But yeah, just the way that they like carried themselves and the way they spoke, it definitely made me think, oh, 2019 instead of 1968. The only thing is just that they didn't have iPhones and all the other shit.
You could kind of tell it was old because every fucking jock was wearing a Letterman jacket.
Oh, yeah.
And no one does that.
No. I mean, not really. Maybe in like the suburbs or something like that, but I don't know. But this was kind of that sleepy small town. I guess it makes sense. You know, the football team is probably popular there. It's very similar in that nature to a lot of other movies. And that was kind of one of our other gripes, is just that through the dialogue, through stuff like that, I know it was meant to be kind of typical, but it felt a little bit too like stereotypical at times.
I think it did too. The only like the pitchfork part, though, that was not PG-13.
No, that wasn't. I mean, there were a few scenes that were not quite for a child's eyes, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
But, I don't know. I guess, overall, yeah, kind of kiddish. But then we get into the parts that were, I would say, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more mature, the actual monsters themselves. So I guess we can talk about how they were included in the overall film, but what do you think that the monsters were good?
The scarecrow was dope. The fat bitch was scary. And the big toe one was okay.
Mm.
That one had the most like suspense, I would say. And then the Who man, what was his name?
The Jangly Man.
The Jangly Man.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck he was saying, but he was like, I don't know. He was like so CGI though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the end with the Jangly Man, because the Jangly Man is actually a new thing to the film. It was not featured in the stories, although it's kind of an amalgamation of a few different stories. There was like that My Tai Doti Walker or something like that. I don't remember the exact title, but it was a combination of that and like a couple other stories. And it was an original monster, which was cool, but I really kind of wish that it was mostly just Troy James as the Jangly Man and not so much CGI. Yeah, so I agree with that. But the rest were pretty cool. Actually, I was kind of disappointed mostly in the big toe one, just because it was probably one of the shortest segments or shortest like stories in the movie. And I just wanted it to be a little bit better. I didn't mind that they didn't show it too much, but I was expecting more out of that one. My favorite one probably was the Pale Lady, actually. I won't say what happened, obviously, but yeah, I like the way that they approached that one. It actually kind of gave me anxiety a little bit, just because, I don't know, if I imagine myself in that particular scenario, I'd be pretty terrified.
And there was no getting away from it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that one was pretty cool. The rest were also pretty cool. The Herald segment was good. And then, you know, that mostly covers the stories that were kind of included in this film. So not a ton, and they were mostly fairly short, but still featured kind of more stories than your typical anthology movie. So, I mean, it kind of gave us what we wanted, but do you have any like particular stories from the books that you wanted to see in this movie that were left out?
Not really. I like the fat bitch. I like the I like the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow was honestly the one I was most excited about because, like, when we even bring up Scarecrow movies, you hear me. I complain about not having enough Scarecrows in horror, and last time we really saw, like, the epitome of a Scarecrow was, like, Jeepers Creepers. Even though he wasn't a Scarecrow, he kind of was, you know, like, that's where he got his inspiration was from, you know, actual Scarecrows. But, you know, the whole, like, Victor Salva being a pedophile and that coming to light, that kind of killed it. And I guess people are like, all right, we want nothing to do with Scarecrows or anything that reminds people of Scarecrows. There's still people doing Scarecrow movies. Like, there's a bunch of free movies on Prime, but, like, it's all, like, heavy CGI bullshit, and I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't really like a lot of them that come out either. Like Scarecrows, which we have covered on the show before. That one was really good, but I think they did a good job with Harold. You know, the practical effects for the monsters overall in this movie was great.
I think so.
And I think it was largely in part to Del Toro kind of overseeing things as a producer, but I thought that was awesome. Harold was actually probably my favorite use of practical effects in this movie, so I do commend them for that. Overall, a good segment, but I mean, do you think that the you know, separate stories kind of mixed together with the main story well, or not really?
I think it did because it showed, like, you know, you should know what this movie's about by now. The angry spirit, like, exacting her revenge in her way, even though, like, you know, kids had nothing to do with it. But, you know, as they're being written, they're coming to life. So,
yeah.
Like, I thought that was cool. I thought that was done perfectly. And, you know, it was kind of like targeting the kids based on their fears, you know? Except it was just a demon and not a alien spider who has an arch enemy who's a giant turtle.
Yeah, I know. I mean, despite all that cosmic shit, you know, it still felt like it was more impactful to me. Maybe because it was a more mature, darker film. Definitely an R-rated type of story as opposed to this one. But yeah, this one didn't have that punch for me. Even a lot of the stories didn't really feel like they had a ton of impact. The red spot too, I won't say what happens obviously, but that one I was expecting a little bit more, you know, with the spiders and everything. But that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, it kind of went together. I don't know. I still think if there was just more of just an importance given to each of the stories, it may have been a little bit better, a little bit more memorable.
And I felt like the stories, like, flew by a lot while they were happening.
Because they were pretty short in comparison to all the other shit. It was just like scenes of exposition, story, scene of exposition, story.
Yeah.
You know, and the stories were a little bit shorter than all the scenes of exposition. So the pacing occasionally, I mean, it was spaced out okay, but the pacing overall felt weird.
It started off slow, then it took off, then another, like, slow pace for a minute, then again took off, then slow paced, exposition, slow burn, and then it just took off like crazy at the jail.
Yeah, so
police station, whatever the fuck.
I couldn't even, like, determine really how long the movie was.
It felt like it was like a 2-hour movie, honestly.
Yeah, so maybe
how long was
a little bit shorter. I'd have to check exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like an hour, 45 minutes, or 2 hours, something like that. So yeah, actually looking up here, an hour and 47 minutes. So honestly, I think could have been a little bit shorter. One thing that it did do for me though was cement itself as just a good, like, Halloween time movie.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Like, if you're gonna watch this movie, wait till it comes out probably in October on Blu-ray. If you're in the Halloween spirit, watch this movie because, you know, childhood flashbacks. You're with your friends, throwing eggs at shit, Halloween.
Yeah,
that's all. That was all the appeal for me, honestly, and the actual creatures. But, like, the dialogue, and it was aesthetically a good movie. But like we said, the script was like for like 5th graders.
Yeah, I definitely feel like if I was at least, I don't know, 9 or 10 years younger, I would love this, especially if it was kind of one of my introductory films to horror, because it definitely feels like that. This is one of those, it's maybe a little bit more shocking, but not much. If it feels like, you know, if you're a teen and you're kind of starting to get into the genre, like, this is a great movie to get you into the genre.
I'd have to agree, because, like, at that age, like, if you're not like us, if you're like a normal teenager and you haven't been exposed to horror that much, I think this is a good place to start. It has, like, the creatures and the jump scares and the atmosphere at times, and
Mhm.
really, if you're not a huge fan of horror movies and you're starting off with this one, like you get to like see some cliches, like guy is running and then he trips over a pitchfork.
Yeah, the cliches were a bit unnecessary. I mean, I would think that they were at least sort of intentional at times, just because this does feel kind of like a love letter to horror movies in general and horror anthologies, I suppose.
Think about it. The first story with Harold, like, oh, he's walking, I'm running,
Mhm.
and it still catches up. Like,
Yeah.
because you trip. Like,
Yeah, but despite all that, it still is able to kind of perform the function of, you know, the anthology style thing pretty well, where the stories actually have some kind of moral to them or message or whatever, or they're like ironic karma sort of messages, you know. But that's just kind of the basis of these short anthology films. They're meant to do that in order to make their point. So I think that was okay. One thing that we won't expand upon, but that is interesting, and I want to hear from you guys what you thought about it, was another Guillermo del Toro influence, in my opinion, the whole war angle.
yeah.
You guys will see what I mean. That was interesting, and I think that there is some relation of that to the actual plot here, but I think that's something that I'll have to discuss with you guys in more detail, as it would be really kind of a spoiler. But think about it, 1968, there's stuff with the Vietnam War going on, and that's all I'll pretty much say about that. So, do you have anything more you want to say about Scary Stories? I will say, overall, I did kind of like it. I liked the vibe it was bringing. I think some of the execution, especially with the script, could have been better, but I see a lot of good things about this film.
6.8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. 6 to 7, I think is a good number. So that's all we have to say about Scary Stories, guys. Definitely had high expectations for this one. I don't know if it quite met them, but still worth checking out.
It didn't for me, and it's fucked up because I was looking forward to this one just as much as It Chapter 2. So hopefully It Chapter 2 isn't a letdown. It's 3 hours fucking long or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that one's going to feel... hopefully it flies by. I think that's going to be one of the defining factors of that movie. This one kind of weak in that aspect, but let us know what you guys think about it. We are going to move on to our final segment here, where we examine a new horror film to streaming services. This one's on Hulu. We're going to talk about it on The Chopping Block. Welcome back, creeps. And on this week's Chopping Block, we have, as I mentioned before, a new movie to Hulu. And this one is also a horror anthology. It's called The Field Guide to Evil. And the whole thing with this one is that it's supposed to have stories based from folklore and tall tales and whatnot from all over the globe, which is a pretty interesting concept. Did it pan out, though? Give us your thoughts.
So let me start off by saying they should have went the like traditionalist route for these horror anthologies, but instead, and I know you're gonna agree with this, every segment was experimental horror. Every segment. Yeah,
I would say it kind of fell more into the sort of like folk horror style.
It was super like avant-garde, you know what I mean? Like Hagazusa.
Yeah, ish. I mean, the first segment definitely, because it thematically was similar, but
dude, it seemed
the rest, yeah. Too.
The first one, I thought it was gonna be Hagazusa, just like reiterated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's been a lot of those types of movies coming out recently too, with the popularity of The Witch.
I was gonna say, yeah, The Witch started this shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gave me that vibe for sure. I enjoyed the first segment okay enough, but you know, we're not gonna go like in depth on every segment or anything. We're just gonna kind of give our overall sort of thoughts. But yes, definitely a lot more like slow burn. I wouldn't say like psychological horror that much. It just had that kind of more, I don't know what's the word for it, like deliberate kind of style to it.
Yeah, all of them had the booming bass in the background for a score, and like all of them were like really slow paced. Besides like the Greek one, where they ate the goblins or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that one was very strange. I mean, there were a few different ones. The melon heads one.
Yeah, that one was fucking stupid.
I didn't like it, but yeah, a little bit different, I suppose. It was odd for the sake of being odd.
I think so.
And that you know, myth does exist, but that wasn't really kind of what I was envisioning. And I don't know if that was the intent. I don't think it worked out, unfortunately. In my opinion, probably the weakest segment here. And, maybe Del Toro was right, because that one we kind of do remember because of how fucking stupid it was. But I think it's also due to the fact that a lot of the other ones were tonally kind of similar, and some of them stood out well enough, like the Goblin one, but in general, they kind of had that experimental feel to them. And I don't even know if they really had morals to a lot of them.
Yeah, the first one was like, don't be gay or whatever, like, which was fucking weird.
It was religious. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and like, turned out her mom was the monster or whatever the fuck. I don't give a fuck, I'll give spoilers.
Okay. Well, I don't want to give too many spoilers away. I'm not going to give my answer to this just yet, but there were a couple I did like. The one with the djinn and the whole baby, that was kind of cool.
That one was
I
my
liked that
favorite one.
One of the ones with actual like practical effects that I found effective. There wasn't really a lot of CGI in this movie in general, which I did appreciate. It was a lot of practical effects, which was nice. Obviously, different teams working on each film, so it was kind of noticeable when some of the practical effects were worse.
Oh yeah,
than in other segments. But let's talk real quick about how it performed as an actual anthology film, because I thought the intro and how it was presented as an anthology actually worked pretty well.
it reminded me of like the ABCs of Death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like even the transitions and everything.
Yeah, you had like the book style kind
Exactly.
of thing. It's the title of our episode, so that's often how these are presented, as these like stories that you might read out of a book, usually influenced or actually inspired by some kind of folk tale, some kind of legend like that. These ones definitely had that vibe to them, but you didn't really like it too much, so I mean, why not?
I felt like it was way too like experimental for me.
Okay.
Like I get it sometimes, like movies try to be trippy and metaphorical and everything, but like this is where like we're discussing like folk tales, like the monster in the woods that they tell you is gonna get you if you wander off outside. Like, and that's what I wanted to see. I didn't want to see just a bunch of trippy bullshit, and that's really what we got with this movie. That's why the Jinn segment, the Turkish one, was like really the only one I actually liked. What were the other ones? Do you remember? Because
yeah, there was.
let me talk shit about all of them one by one, just real quick.
This one I actually liked. You might not like it too much, but the black and white one, the Indian one, with those deformed people.
Yes, okay, that one too. That one was good.
Yeah.
I didn't like the one with the two brothers who were shoemakers.
Yeah, some people actually really liked that one. I wasn't a huge fan. The production design was okay, like the set design and everything. Costuming was cool, but the story just felt kind of whatever to me.
And we didn't really see horror until the end.
Yeah, which it doesn't always have to be. I still think that there was kind of a moral to that story. I just wasn't sucked into that story as much as I was a few of the other ones. There was also the German one with the rat thing. That was a bad example of CGI in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that rat was horrible.
Yeah, there was a Polish one as well, directed by Agnieszka Smoczynska, who did The Lure, which was kind of like a musical horror film. It was interesting. This one, I kind of felt it was average. Like, I didn't completely understand what happened in it, especially at the end, but it was all right.
It was okay. I think that was the one that had to be more trippy because just a crazy dude eating hearts and there's this demon. That's about it.
Basically. So that mostly covers pretty much all of the stories and our sort of initial reactions to them. Overall, is this one chopped for you?
Yeah, it's chopped.
And why?
Nothing really happened in the stories that really had me invested. You know how many times I had to rewind this because I kept looking at my phone because of how uninterested I was? It took me 2 days to watch this movie. I watched half of it and I was like, all right, fuck this. I need a break from this shit. The next day I watched it. I had parts, like I said, where I just kept rewinding because, like, I just wasn't invested in it. Like, I just felt like it could have been done way better.
That's fair, yeah. I think they could have punched up at least a few more of the segments, not kept them all the, like, almost exact same sort of vibe or tone. But Yeah, for me, honestly, I'm going to say this. If you're into this type of folk horror, experimental horror stuff like The Witch, and you just want to see that, for like an hour, almost approaching 2 hours, I think, then this one isn't chopped. I'm going to say it's not chopped just because I think there are some merits. A lot of the cinematography and the practical effects and the score and everything are actually pretty good, but where it loses itself sometimes is just in the substance of the stories and yeah, just the entertainment factor, I would say. So that's our take on The Field Guide to Evil on Hulu right now. And that's going to wrap it up here for episode 73, guys. So if you have any thoughts about anything or just want to discuss pretty much anything in horror with us, you can hit us up on our social media. We have a Facebook and Instagram where you can reach us at Grave Discussions, and a Twitter where we are GraveDiscSRD. You can also check out all of our stuff on our website, gravediscussions.net.
And make sure to tune in next week where we play dodgeball for charity here on Grave Discussions. I'm so disappointed that I don't even want to do the growly voice.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
This has been an SRD production.